Welcome to today's podcast for Pacific Northwest Farmers Cooperative Market Update for May 12th, 2026. I'm Trudi Allenbaugh, Shane Raybold, Lane Hannis. The market certainly has given us a lot to talk about this week, and it's only Tuesday. Before we get into it too much, want to do a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions of this program are of the hosts and for informational purposes only. There is substantial risk in trading futures and options and should be carefully considered prior to trading. So let's get into this week.
I've got something else before we dive into the data and our analysis. Standing in front of me is a major award for my first win of our monthly WASD contest. Very nicely prestigious, done. And I'm glad to have my name on here. Less than 1 year of employment, and I'm on the winner's board. Yes.
He's on it. We've made it.
Yeah, this is an old bowling trophy from the bowling alley underneath the office. Yep. So very proud of this moment.
Nice job, Lane.
Yes,
thank you.
Well done. Way to bring her home from the team, from the accounting department.
All right, so plenty of things to talk about this week other than Lane's first win on the WASD report. First thing we want to say is, we're anticipating with the Kansas crop tour starting today. I haven't heard any data yet. I'm sure it's starting to roll in.
Started early this morning.
Yeah, so that we were all like going, okay, because conditions report came out yesterday, certainly was lower. Then you got Trump 2.0, China summit, lots of interest in ag-related features about that. First of all, everybody's been on the radar about soybeans. Then this morning comes out that there is potential corn from U.S. with this summit. Pretty broad ag, but anyway, lots of support from that. And then we get into the WASD report, and that certainly gave us lots to talk about. So we'll start there with the WASD. Really the 25-26 crop year, pretty benign, a little bit adjustment, down 5 million bushels on the carry or ending stocks, no change on white wheat by class, just kind of move some things around. So not really that much to discuss about that. Big story, 26-27 production. Lane, you want to roll into some of those numbers?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Inserting points.
Today was the first look at what the USDA thinks we're going to have for wheat production, winter wheat production in the U.S. for the 26-27 crop. The big surprise was the number printed for our hard red winter wheat crop. Expectations were for it to be around 575 million, which is a big reduction from last year, but it came in at 515 million bushels. Overall, U.S. winter wheat production going to be down 25% from last year. Went back through the records. USDA has stuff back to 1909 on U.S. wheat production. This will be the least amount of winter wheat that we produce if these projections come to fruition since 1964. Now
break it down. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Okay, it sounds scary. We're going to have, it sounds like half a crop, right? But the United States share of world wheat production is quite small now. It's 6.4% last year. 1964, we were 13.2% of the world's production of wheat. 1982 was our biggest production year ever for wheat, winter wheat specifically, and it was twice as much as we're projected to have this year, exactly twice as much. At that point, we were 17% of the world's production. So what all it means is the U.S. is a smaller share of the world's production. We have less leverage on what world values are going to do. So that's probably the one bearish thing I can point to today is global competition is still going to be stiff. There's enough wheat in the world, big carryover stocks, that there's going to be a lid on this to some point. With a 45-cent run up in Kansas City today, lock limit up at the close. Is that going to price us out of export demand? Probably. Yeah. A couple weeks ago, the rumor was we bought some Polish wheat to import to the United States for the Eastern mills. So we're pricing ourselves out of domestic demand too. Higher prices like this will certainly continue to see those trends.
I thought it was interesting. There was a couple of notes on the global part of it. So you have projected lower U.S. number, but also they had some lower global numbers. I think Aussie was not lower at 30 million metric tons versus 36 last year. Argentina was 21 million versus 27 last year. So I just looked at that a little bit of we're in that time frame of building in these risk premiums of the unknown on this new global
Absolutely.
production, which just I think of the 1-2 punch of those conditions yesterday is still deteriorating on hard red winter. So certainly as you try to build in does it warrant a premium? Yes. Does it warrant 45? I don't know. I mean, that demand will answer that for us. But certainly some interesting numbers. And I think just having those global production as well, a little bit lower, ending stocks a little bit tighter on
And
that.
the USDA's support for lowering those global production figures in the southern hemisphere is the Super El Nino.
Right.
That's still on the calendar right now. It looks like that weather pattern is still developing.
Right.
So typically going to see Australia struggle to produce crops there.
I was just going to ask, what is the current issue, standing with Australia?
Yeah, what came out earlier this week was a report from one of their government agencies. I can't remember which one. It was somewhere in Western Australia, GIWA. Don't ask me the actual words. But, canola planting was up like 15%, and wheat was going to be down 8%. Okay, so on the topic of canola, any changes to those balance sheets?
Absolutely. Stats Canada came out back in March 5th, increased planting productions or planting assessments by about 1%. Most of that was all in Saskatchewan. So definitely seeing continued increase as expected with prices rallying. It's still kind of a shining star up there as it is in here. The true planting report will come out June 30th is what we'll look for. And we'll kind of see whether that kicks off the seasonal trends or not with canola.
I think there was an article earlier this week, I think in Bloomberg, that was talking about just with everything that's happened with fertilizer and crude and fuel and those starting to try to do that projection of Australia is specifically going, they're going to plant less wheat, they're going to plant more oil seeds. And so we've got some time frame before those numbers really get on paper printed too. So, I think that's when we talk about this, all the stuff in the marketplace and the geopolitical things that are happening with the longevity of Iran in the situation and no peace deal, that we're going to continue to hear that sentiment more and more on what is the global impact. Is it 26? Is it 27 crop? Is it further beyond? I mean, and I think those are, again, why we're seeing these risk premiums build in here, because globally FOB values have also come up or at least strengthened or held steady because of that too. So that's a lot of the unknowns on where we go from here. Anything else? Corn and beans, they seem pretty
Things were
neutral.
pretty benign there. Yeah, I think they had some strength today just because wheat was almost limit up in Chicago. So I can just read what USDA printed on the WASD for corn and oil seeds. The 26-27 U.S. corn outlook is for reductions to supply, total use, and ending stocks with higher expected prices. The corn crop is projected at 16 billion bushels, down 6% from a year ago on declines to both area and yield. Planted area of 95.3 million acres, if realized, would be down 3.5 million. The yield projection of 183 bushels per acre is based on a weather-adjusted trend assuming normal planting progress and summer growing season weather. Larger beginning stocks partially offset the forecast reduction in production, resulting in total corn supplies declining 2% to 18.1 billion bushels. World corn production for 26-27 is forecast to decline from prior year's record of 1.295 billion metric tons, down 17.3 million tons from the prior year, but still the second highest on record.
I think interesting note about that was that we've been talking a lot about USDA and their projection for South American corn, and we finally saw some increasing yields on those for Brazil and Argentina. So that certainly is going to warrant some increased global production on corn as well.
Yeah, and it was mentioned in here that higher than expected on-farm prices for the U.S., That was also what they wrote for wheat. They expect on-farm prices to rise $1.50 per bushel from $5 last year to $6.50 this year. Okay, that's average in the United States. I'm not telling you our wheat's going $1.50 higher here in the PNW.
Good disclaimer. Yeah. So I think that corn and beans, they certainly were within the projections anyway, and we've got a time frame before you have actual planted acres and everything on the progress and crop conditions. Pace of corn and bean and spring wheat planting is on pace or good. So, and I think the forecast is favorable for that as well.
I had jotted down, corn plantings at 57%. Last year they were 59. Beans are at 49%. Last year they were 45. So I think that's why, to add on to why they didn't do much. I mean, beans were up 10, corn was up a half, 1 maybe.
A couple cents.
Yeah.
Anything else on the progress and crop conditions that you saw that was something that looked a little off or I struggle a little bit on the conditions, even though, we'll see what the crop tour comes out with too. But it seems to me that if you look at the 5-year averages, you're talking about some pretty severely hits of the major production states of hard red winter. That number seems pretty significant. But then, you go over the last 5 or 6 years of what the USDA does on some of those really, really poor crop years. What they end up with production is well above some of these early projections, and so I kind of take it with a little bit of, where do we end up from here? And we got 60% stocks to use. I mean, how do you...
I kind of imagine we only go up from here as far as projections and estimates on our winter wheat crop for this year. They're printing a low number now just so that they can add on to it later when they start getting the data, the harvest data. So that's probably the direction we move, is higher on these projections.
I think the other thing that we were going to talk about, or was interesting too, was I believe for Washington, for conditions, it stayed the same. Idaho got a little bit better. Montana got better on winter wheat conditions, which I didn't think they really haven't received some of those rains that they were looking for or had been forecasted. So it'll be interesting how that plays out. And then also the projected new crop planted winter wheat for white wheat was lower.
5% lower white wheat production. So I did look into that a little bit. With white wheat, we've got both soft white wheat and hard white wheat. Okay, what was the actual number? 232 million bushels of white wheat production for 26-27.
This is just winter wheat, right? Because we don't have
just
any
winter wheat.
spring
Yep,
planted
not
wheat.
talking any spring white wheat right now. Of that 232 million, 8 million of it, a very small amount, is hard white wheat. Last year, the United States grew 16 million bushels of hard white wheat. So we've got half as much hard white wheat this year. It's grown in that HRW, Southern Plains area, not too much here in the PNW. And then the reduction on white wheat year over year was, another 6 million bushels, something like that. Pretty much unchanged from last year. So hard white wheat bringing down the total. White wheat about the same.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, as we're looking out here and things look pretty good. And of course it's early and I don't want to be too much projections just yet. But I thought it was interesting. I thought if anything, we'd maybe see some increased production on that.
Sure.
But it's kind of going on average yields and planted acreage. And so
I did write down the 10-year average on white wheat winter production. It's 227 million bushels. So slightly above the 10-year average this year.
Okay, cool. Good. So I guess, where we got a lot of numbers, a lot of data, a lot of things going on. Gonna just definitely wait for what happens with in China on the summit. A little bit of opinion on that is kind of the same thing as we've seen before. Do they have a deal? Is it a certain amount of numbers? Is it tonnages? Is it dollars? Where does ag fit into it? I think is what everybody, traders are looking for. Anything that has positive direction on China and ag products is going to be well supported in the marketplace. Time will tell whether that
Oh,
comes to
you've got to see
fruition.
the purchases.
Yeah, right.
You can't bank on them buying
Yeah.
anything they say they'll buy.
But
in my
you will
opinion.
see the market react to a positive report from this summit before that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, just like those soybeans and stuff before that. So everybody, all eyes on that as well. Crop tour, and then just Iran. I think you keep watching that. It's not over yet, and the longer that happens, the more supportive we are to.
I've got a question. How big can the spread get between white wheat and hard red winter wheat?
Yeah, well, this is a great question because look at what happened today versus, so you're talking about true winter wheat production, disparity or where it's going to be at versus Chicago and white wheat. So
When is white wheat going to catch a bid? We're up 5 cents today when the board was up 40, and of course hard red winter wheat went penny for penny. So it's a tough question.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah. You see a lot of, especially because we're not demand driven yet on our new crop for white wheat. You see that separation between Chicago futures and cash bids. So, I mean, basis today got crushed. That tells you that even though futures are trading here, demand isn't there yet. What we really need to see in white wheat world is our inelastic demand buyers to come in and say, hey, these prices are going higher. I need to secure something here. We're concerned about availability, something like that gives it a stronger tradable number. Otherwise, I think, futures are going to do what futures do. You're going to see cash grind higher a little bit as it has to. So until we truly have some more demand, and that feeds right into your outlook and where do we go from here. I think it's going to be one of those years where you got to use all the tools again. Scale into your HTAs, keep scaling up your orders and cash too. What we don't know is, like today, where basis got really weak for white wheat, if we trade higher futures and cash demand doesn't warrant it, we could see a weak basis for some prolonged period before that gets
Absolutely.
better. So how do I manage through that? Having some cash sales on probably is not a bad idea.
I agree. I agree.
of
With
it.
the size of crop we think we've got coming, cash price at 640, close to our near-term highs, is a good place to start. And you're not selling the whole farm today. You're just getting started, so you got some cash flow come harvest time. We've been fielding questions about carry and enrolling HTAs here recently. So today at the close, September 26th to September of 27, the carry is only 35 cents. For December of 26 to December of 27, only 28 cents. It's a very weak carry. If you calculate the full financial carry based on a maximum of 5 cent storage cost set by CME and current interest around 6%, full financial carry is like $1.
Okay. I was going to ask that.
That's kind of the highest we could get. So we're very weak right now. If these conditions persist, weak carries, 20 to 30 cents, that storage rate will start to come down. Okay. And that happens because storage is more widely available. We've got a smaller crop, more places to put it. The supply and demand factors for storage change so much that the cost of storage comes down. That full financial carry will shrink. And none of that tells you what the carry is going to do.
What should I put my roll offer into?
Exactly. I'll tell you here, a week or two ago, we got some done at 50 cents.
Right.
Calendar year to calendar year. I think that's a good place to start.
Because traditionally, I mean, you got to have all those factors come in right before you have full carry, and it doesn't happen that often. I mean, there's always that changing structure in the marketplace to do that. So
now there is decent carry from now until March
Right.
of 27. After March 27, it comes down way, way tighter.
and most of that is because the liquidity in those low, or
Sure. Yep.
the further out you're trading, there's not as much liquidity out there.
But if we see the board pull back, I bet that carry comes back to the market too.
I agree. So maybe not $1, but 50 cents, 35, 50 cents, start putting your orders in to roll some. Good idea. So. And cash, I think if we have another limit up day, which I was going to also remind you, because we had KC and Chicago limit up today on the nearby months, expands to 70 cents tomorrow. So
Yes.
we have 70 cent lock tomorrow. Cash, we're going to hit past 650. I'm sure of it.
Right. Yeah. With big run-ups and futures like this, I always like to revisit the concept of minimum price contracts. So buying a put option or buying a call option to use as a minimum price tool. There's cost to those that can be pretty large, especially when we're as volatile as we are. You could be paying 50 or 60 cents, which is going to come off what your hedge could be at today, but it allows you to participate in the next buck or $2 or $3 higher if we make it to that point. So if anybody has questions about that, give any of us a call.
Sounds really good, because that's the thing, you got to start to kind of hedge some of the risk of the downside when you're having the extreme upside, because we gapped higher today on the futures. So, we at some point in time, the gaps will get filled. You're going to have something come lower. How do I protect in that and still participate in the market?
Again, the big bear is going to be global competition, and where do we lose our export sales?
Right. All right. Anything else to add? Thank you
quiet.
guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.